We'll talk a little Super Bowl. We'll talk a little football. We'll talk a little life. He was the number 2 pick in the NFL draft. He is now a part of the Bleav Podcast Network. Bleav in the Pac12 on the Bleav Podcast Network. You can also hear him breaking down college and NFL football on SiriusXM Radio. And he, like all guests, appears right now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline as we welcome in Ryan Leaf to the show. Ryan, how you been, man?
I'm good, fellas. How are you guys doing? How's the Super Bowl week treating you?
It's not too bad. 3 years ago today, the Philadelphia Eagles, which is where we are, won the Super Bowl, and many of us are wondering what the heck happened. And we've been looking forward to talking to you all week because obviously, as a guy who went through the league and had the ups and downs of playing that position, when you watch Carson Wentz this year, we figure maybe you have some insight on potentially what has happened to a guy who has experienced such highs and this year had so many lows.
Well, for guys that are drafted so high, you'd be surprised how fragile, like, the confidence or ego is if you lose confidence in what you're doing. And the team was bad, period, right? The whole team was bad. And I hate that quarterbacks and coaches get all the credit for when things go right, and they get all the blame for when things go wrong. And it simply wasn't the case. And, you heard Kelsey this year talk about how, we all played poorly. We are a bad team this year. And the quarterback's going to get the brunt end of it. And Doug Peterson said, we're going to try Jalen Hurts instead of riding it out with Carson Wentz. And the organization simply said, hey, we're going to go with our franchise quarterback. And we just don't think, Doug, you were doing anything to help put him in good positions. And we'll see what that looks like a year from now. I do give Philadelphia fans a hard time, especially when I'm in Pennsylvania speaking. They always ask me, of course, what do you think of the Eagles? And I always say, well, I mean, they let the Super Bowl MVP leave town and played the backup, and it always gets your guys' goat so much. And isn't today like the anniversary of the Super Bowl win for you guys 3 years ago?
It sure is, and I think a lot of people.
And you guys have a memorial or a statue out in front, and the two guys that are in the statue, right, they are no longer with the organization. How does that work?
Right, and I would ask you, like, if you walked into a team and you were at one point you were the number 2 pick, just like Carson Wentz, and if your backup had a bronze statue out front, how would that play? I mean, would that be something that you can get past and get over?
I don't know. That's interesting. I'd wonder what it was like, but I mean, they clearly, made the point that the next year by saying, hey, we're going with, we're going to go with Carson again. He's the one that got us to the playoffs. He was having an MVP type of season before he tore his knee up out in Los Angeles. And so, I think if you're a Super Bowl MVP, you have all the confidence in the world. And sure enough, when Carson went down, they were a drop pass away from, the NFC Championship again the next year. So, it's been strange. It really has. I will be really interested to see if the youngster from North Dakota can get that swagger back and do the things he did in that MVP type year 3 years ago. Because if he can't, I wouldn't be surprised if we see Jalen Hurts pretty quick next year if things start going in the opposite direction.
Now, I mean, obviously, again, you mentioned your draft status, and sometimes you have that draft status, but then you walk into an NFL locker room. How difficult is it to walk into that locker room and get the respect? I mean, I guess sometimes you feel like, hey, I'm the quarterback, I'm drafted number 2, they respect me, but it's not that easy.
No, they don't care where you were drafted. If you can lead them, if you could be the quarterback, you could be drafted in the 6th round, a la Tom Brady, or you could be drafted, number 10 overall by the Kansas City Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes. It doesn't matter. It's all what you do on the practice field. And then when you get into a game, especially when you start to make a few mistakes, how you react to that, how you deal with failure. Do you respond correctly? Do you respond in a healthy, positive way? Or do you get defensive and start pointing fingers? That's a big part of it. And what really was a big part of my downfall is that I didn't take any of the accountability when it was my fault, when I was playing poorly. And if I would have done that, I really do think like veterans on the team and Junior Seau and Rodney Harrison, they would have had my back. But because of how defensive I got and how much blame I put on others. The veterans just walked away and said, this isn't the guy that can lead us into the promised land.
Well, that definitely seems like something happening right now with Carson Wentz. There's so many reports every day about the accountability and always blaming others. So maybe that is a big problem. And I just want to bring up the fact that, every time someone speaks about Jalen Hurts, they bring up that leadership quality. When they talk about Carson Wentz, it's more about he's a fiery guy, he's a competitor. But maybe the word leader doesn't really come out. And, I'm just trying to find the balance between the two. And how important is it to be able to relate with these guys and be that leader, but also have that fiery competitor part of you as well? Like, how important is it to find that balance?
Well, I think the leadership part has to be at the forefront, period. And then everything falls after that. Jalen Hurts is a fiery guy, too. He's a leader, but he's a fiery guy out there. That's a part of his resume as well. But if the word leadership is the first thing that comes out of people's mouths when it comes to Jalen Hurts, that right there is the resume builder. He has all the other things. And I saw this in college when covering college football. I was actually my last day of work for ESPN before COVID absolutely decimated everything. I was at the Oklahoma Pro Day watching him go through it. And I thought whatever team, and I actually thought the Baltimore Ravens were a team that were going to take a look at him as a backup to Lamar Jackson. And Philly got in there before that. And I thought got a real steal in the draft by taking him that high. And, we'll see. It's going to have to he's going to have to show promise, Carson Wentz is, early in the season in this new offense, or Jalen Hurts is really going to get a strong look next year.
All right, well, let me ask you this then. Ryan Leaf is our guest from the Bleav Podcast Network. And obviously, Ryan, all these things are out there. He's unhappy. He doesn't want to be there. He still hasn't said a word since Peterson has been fired. Wentz has not said a peep. He hasn't congratulated the new coach. He has said nothing. So, number one, does that tell you he doesn't want to be here? And number two, if he is here, with all that's gone on, how does he walk back into that locker room with all of these reports going? Now, they might not be true. They might not be whatever. But if they are, how does he walk back in there and win that locker room back over?
Well, first off, we don't know if these are true or not. He could have simply called single one of his teammates, the new coach, everybody, and no one has said anything. That's rare. That sources don't leak, but he could have done that. And I from what I know of Carson and having spent the time with him, he's the type of person that would do that. So if he hasn't, that goes against all things character driven by him. And if that's the case, there's a real problem. There is a real problem if that is the response we're getting from him right now. And sometimes you fall off that cliff, right? It's a balancing act, kind of between, elite athlete and ass, right? And you just kind of bounce back and forth because you expect people to have your back because you're the big man on campus. And when that doesn't happen and you feel like you've been betrayed and the loyalty isn't there, you start acting impulsively, like the entitlement takes over and lack of accountability does. And so if that's the way it's trending, you're going to find out pretty quick. You'll find out pretty quick this offseason if it's trending in that direction.
I know that, by the way, Ryan is the host of the Bleav in the Pac12 on the Bleav Podcast Network. You know the quarterback position very well. It's what you studied in your post-career with ESPN and now Bleav and Sirius. This quarterback class here, the Eagles have the 6th pick. So would you move on from Wentz, go to Hurts, or think about a quarterback back at number 6, or try to fix Wentz? They got a lot of options. How would you play it?
Well, the expectation in this league is what? Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady. Those are the expectations, right? We just watched the Rams, who went to the Super Bowl 3 years ago, or 2 years ago, walk away from their Super Bowl quarterback. The 49ers are clearly believing they're in the market for a quarterback when their quarterback took them to a Super Bowl a year ago. So if that's not good enough, then certainly if the Eagles have a chance at a quarterback that they feel that can compete over the next decade with the likes of Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen or that situation, then you might have to go do that. Now, if the new coaching staff and the ownership believe that Carson Wentz is the guy to take them there, then you use that 6th pick on what your next biggest need is. And for the Philadelphia Eagles, I would suspect it is to bolster that offensive line to protect Carson, to finally get it right at the wide receiver position when you make a draft pick, and do something maybe in the back end of that defense. Those are the glaring spots I see in the Eagles past the quarterback position. So it will be an interesting draft. If they firmly Bleav that they need to find another quarterback to compete with the likes of Mahomes and Brady, then in Stafford now down in LA, they're going to have to look. I don't think that's the case. I think Carson comes out gangbusters next year if he's with the Eagles. I think he has a hell of a bounce back year and puts the Eagles in contention in the NFC East.
No, I hope you're right. Well, when you watched Carson Wentz struggle last year, not seeing the field, mechanics, injuries on the offensive line, what stood out to you most when it comes to that downfall?
Well, the way he was just careless with the football. That wasn't him. He wasn't that guy early in his career. Doug Peterson must have kind of given him the green light, it felt like, because some of the times where he was making some throws, he was taking chances that he normally didn't do. And usually when you start doing that, it's not because you're not seeing the field well. It's because you've been coached up all week that, like, hey, we need to take these shots. We need to take these chances. And he felt confident in doing that. I don't think he expected to be benched by Peterson one iota, because I think he was following his leadership on how to play the quarterback position last year, because it was so out of the ordinary that he turned the ball over as much as he did.
Ryan Leaf, we'll leave you with your thoughts on this game. You mentioned Mahomes. You mentioned Brady. This might be the best quarterback matchup, the young versus the old. One guy going for 7, the other guy chasing him would get his second. So how do you see this one playing out on Sunday?
Well, I all my years watching the NFL, all my years playing, and my post-career in an analyst chair, I have not seen an offense that has been this efficient and this effective. I just haven't. And therefore, you have to do things that make you uncomfortable on the other side of the football, out of the ordinary. And Bruce Arians is that guy. He really is. He's a guy that will go for it on 4th down in his own territory. He's a guy that will do some madness on special teams. And their defense has gotten turnovers. That's how you're going to have to beat the Chiefs this year, because they simply score when they have the football. When they need to, they score. And you have to find a way to limit possessions or to steal possessions from them. And if the Bucs can do that, if they get Antoine Winfield Jr. back and they use him more as a utility guy to kind of follow Mahomes a little bit, shadow him, not necessarily shadow him so much, but just kind of sit in that mid to deep zone area to make sure you can stop him on 3rd down when he's used his feet to continue and extend drives. That's how you beat him. I still don't think it gets done. I think the Chiefs win 38-35.
38-35. Great game, great insight from former NFL quarterback Ryan Leaf of the Bleav Podcast Network. Check him out there. And, of course, he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. And you can check more from him at Ryan D. Leaf on Twitter. Ryan, it was a pleasure to catch up with you, man. We appreciate it.
You bet, fellas. Have a great Super Bowl weekend.